Hey guys, Andy's Aquarium here. So I just wanted to do a quick video on goldfish tanks and the whole setup procedure and some tips on some of the basic necessities that you need for a goldfish. So we're gonna start off by attacking the whole substrate issue. So I've always kept my goldfish tanks with the regular size gravel, as you can see there. I've never had an issue. Some people, they will say, oh, it's not the best thing. The goldfishes can choke on it. In my last 20 years, I've never had a goldfish that actually swallowed the gravel and choked on it or died. So, I'm not too overly concerned about that. And the next nice thing about gravel is these guys, they like to peck at the bottom. So, they'll like go through and find food that's kind of stuck in there. It's also really great for keeping all your beneficial bacteria, which helps with their waste matter. So I love the gravel. Some people are, big on bare bottom tanks. I think it's, I don't like the way it looks, and I don't think it's very healthy for the fish. But when it comes to goldfish, it's a whole different kind of ball game because they're not a regular fish in nature, but they're cousins that they actually evolved from, which was the grass carp. They love to be on the bottom and kind of feed through the substrate. So having a bare bottom, I don't like it, but some people do it, so that's an option as well. And your last option for substrate would be like sand. And I'm not a big fan of sand just because, it's really messy to deal with when it comes to vacuuming your substrate. So if you're going to do a cleaning on your tank and you're going to gravel vac the sand, chances are a lot of it is going to get sucked out, especially if you do it properly. And you don't want any kind of ammonia pockets building up in your sand too, which can be very harmful for the fish. So in my opinion, go with the gravel. It looks great and it gets the job done. So moving right along, the next thing I would talk about is probably filtration. Goldfishes in general are messy fishes. When it comes to filtration, more is better. So like this here, this is a 20-gallon tank and I've got a 30-gallon filter on it. And this is a hang-on back filter, as you can see right here. This is made by Top Fin and it's adjustable, which is nice. So if you have any kind of other fishes in the tank that doesn't require heavy flow, you can kind of adjust it. When it comes to goldfishes though, I wouldn't recommend mixing too many other fishes with them. You could get away with some stuff like white cloud minnows, sometimes rosy barbs, platies, things where they don't require like extra warm water. You should be just fine. So filtration, you want to go more. Aeration too is very important because that helps with the water quality. As you can see, I have a air tube there on the back, and that does help getting oxygen into the water. So I would definitely go big on the aeration too. You don't have to go excessively big, but something like that, right? That keeps the water nice and oxygenated. Here I have two Sarasa Comets, and these guys, they do grow big. This is just kind of a grow out tank slash snowbird tank, and I call it snowbird tank because these guys are gonna go into my pond, but because it's winter and it's minus God knows what outside, I don't want to put them in there and they freeze or get eaten or whatever the case may be. So I just bring them in for the winter. And the next thing I would talk about is water temperature, which is, it's not ideal to have goldfishes in too warm of water. As a matter of fact, you don't want them in warm water. You want them more in the cooler temperatures. So anything from 65, actually I will say from 70 to 75 is good. These guys, I've got this tank at 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and they're fairly happy. Anything above 78 degrees, you run into troubles where you can start stressing the fish, because these are more of a cold water fish, or a cooler water fish, I would say. So you don't want them in too warm of a water, because then they start eating more and it puts more stress on the fish, which can then lead to other complications like ick and what have you. So yeah, that's for the water temperature. And when it comes to cleaning your tank, you kind of want to stay on a set schedule. So again, it depends what kind of bio load you have. I do my water cleaning for this tank, once a week. Some people would say, you can do it twice a week. And I do a gravel vac. I don't ever recommend just changing the water, because there's still all of that ammonia in your substrate. It's just better to vacuum it out and make it clean. But again, you can set it up where 1 week you do just like a water change. You change like quarter or half the water. I always change half the water. And then the following week you do like a gravel vac, and that way you're tackling both, but you're not doing the gravel vac every single week. So again, there's a few variants with that. Again, I would say be careful with your tank size. The smaller your tank, the more you kind of want to clean it to kind of keep that ammonia and that nitrate levels at bay. Otherwise, you can run into some serious problems. So stick to a set cleaning schedule, and with a larger tank you can get away with less cleaning schedule. Like instead of doing it once a week, you can do it twice a week, or whatever the case may be. I would never recommend doing it once a month. I just think you're asking for trouble at that point. But there is a few factors. So like, for example, this tank, I've got fake plants, and because they're goldfishes, I don't have live plants. But there are some options. I mean, like, you can put something like Amazon sword, you can put Anubis, which you can actually attach to like one of these rocks. And that would kind of help too with your water quality and the nitrate levels. Because the plants kind of feed off all of that waste that you have in the tank. So that is an option to kind of help with your water quality as well. And as far as food is concerned, you want to be careful. So like, these guys are not the fancy goldfishes like the fantail, an oranda, a lionhead, or just a regular butterfly tail. So again, it just depends what kind of goldfishes you have with regards to your food. But definitely, if it's one of the fancy variety, I would say get sinking pellets. And the reason for that is you don't want them to get swim bladder infection, and that's from gulping air at the surface of the water. However, if you have something like a Sarasa comet, or the common goldfishes like these guys here, you don't have to worry too much. You could have floating foods and stuff like that. I still feed them sinking pellets, but it's a bit more flexible with these guys because they don't get affected by the swim bladder as much as the or as like the fancy variety. So with foods, I would definitely recommend you invest a bit more in your foods. People tend to cheap out. What you want to do is you want to get a food where there's a lot less fillers inside, and that's also going to help with your water quality. So I suggest that if you're gonna get any foods, I would suggest you stick to something. If you want like a medium quality, I would say go with the omega uh, goldfish food. They're not bad. However, if you want to spend a bit more, you can go with Hikari. They make really good goldfish foods. Also the gel foods. One thing I do to kind of help my goldfishes is I actually give them brine shrimp, and the brine shrimp is really good for kind of their digestive tract to kind of push out any kind of waste they may have in their system. And that way your fishes are not constipated, especially if you have fancy goldfishes. I would definitely recommend you know giving them that brine shrimp maybe twice a week. Bloodworms are good too, you can also do that. One thing I do sometimes too to mix it up is I give them green peas, and what I do is I boil it, and I take off the skin, and then I just kind of give them the pea, and that really helps them to, not be constipated, and kind of helps the fish with their digestive tract to kind of clear out any waste matter. So that's, I think that's pretty much it for foods. And again, when it comes to decorations, I would say, stay away from sharp objects. Goldfishes in general, you don't want to put too much decorations in their tank. They need kind of room to swim. So don't put anything sharp where they could like hurt themselves, rip their fins, or scratch the side of their bodies. Especially if you have fancy goldfishes, because they're a bit more clumsy. And they kind of rub themselves more into stuff, and I think part of it is because of the way they're built, and they have terrible eyesight, right? So you kind of want to look out for your fish's well-being. um, so tank size, the recommendation is, if you've got fancy goldfishes, they say 20 gallon for the first fish, and 10 gallons for any other fishes you're going to add beyond that. So if you're going to get 3 goldfishes, you probably want a 40 gallon, and so on and so forth. I say, you kind of have to use your brain when it comes to fish keeping, right? So, I mean, like, you don't have to go out right away and get a 30 gallon for 2 tiny goldfishes, right? Like, this is a 20 gallon, and as you can see, I've got 2 goldfishes that's going to get up to 12 inches, but because they're so small and I'm just kind of, keeping them inside for the winter, I'm not too worried about it, right? Because they have lots of swimming room, they're happy. However, if they were like, 7 to 12 inches, I wouldn't put them in here. That's when, you're asking for trouble, right? So if your fishes are still in their infancy stage, you can put them in a smaller tank. Just be prepared to get something larger. And fair warning, when it comes to these common or Sarasa goldfishes like I have here, these guys get big. They go up to 12 inches. So obviously, you probably want to really think what you're doing. I would say you'd probably need a 75 gallon for 2 of them at full maturity. So those are all things that you kind of have to keep in mind, right? You need to know a bit about your fishes, know how big they're going to get. Don't just go in the store and buy it, right? So it's okay to start small as long as you're prepared to go larger with it. So when it comes to fancies, though, you know, the largest fancy I've seen is probably about 8 inches, and that fish was like 12 years old. So that's the next thing. Goldfishes, they live a long time, and you know, the right care, right? So if you have all the right parameters in your tank, they're gonna be around you for a long time. So, you know, I would say these fishes are, you know, some of them they can, I think the oldest goldfish in the world was like 50 years old. That, you know, has been kept in, well, they're all in captivity, right? They're goldfishes. But anyways, yeah, that's the longest I've known a goldfish to live, 50 years. But there's a lot of them out there who's like 20 years old, and you know, um, be prepared. You know, it's something that you kind of have to stick with for a while. Um, and you know, I always say to people, listen, in the fish keeping hobby, I don't judge anyone because you know, preferences change sometimes, right? You know, so you know, you may have a goldfish now, and you know, 5 years later, you may want to change to a community tank. Um, it's just you know, you kind of have to think about all these things. So these fishes are not like, you know, like guppies. They're gonna live for 3 years max or 2 years. You know, um, they're a long-term investment. So I mean, if you have kind of a backup plan, you know someone that's gonna take it off you, or you know, God forbid you have a friend that's got a huge tank and he's been in the hobby for a while, then by all means, you know, um, as long as you have that backup plan, you can, you know, give it a shot. But you know, I would always caution people when it comes to goldfishes. You know, these guys they hang around for a bit. So I think I've yapped on enough about goldfishes here. Anyways, I hope this has been helpful. Uh, the only other thing I would say is you don't need a heater. You know, as long as your water temperature is, you know, um, is the house temperature, which is normally, you know, 78, 76 to 78 degrees, then you should be fine. Uh, you know, and again, these guys, they're pretty hardy, you know. They can be outside in the springtime. Um, if your pond's deep enough, you can actually put them, you can leave them out for the winter. Um, if you have some sort of heater, you know, because they kind of hibernate if you leave them out in the pond. And I'm not talking about the fancies. I'm talking about, you know, these common goldfishes. But anyways, hope this has been helpful. Like, subscribe, look at my other videos, and have yourself a wonderful day and happy fish keeping.